Sergeant of Arms.
Good afternoon.
A lot of them wanted to blame their
At this time, we will call to order the Diversion Authority Board meeting of Thursday, December 19th, 2019, to order.
And West Fargo.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sherling?
Here.
Mr. Peterson? Mr. Steen?
Here.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn?
Here.
Mr. Grinberg?
Here.
Mr. Judd?
Here.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Here.
Ms. Carlson?
Here.
Mr. Campbell? Mr. Wayland?
Here.
Mr. Thorsted?
Here.
Mr. Olson?
I am here.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. And thank you all for being here. You have the minutes to the previous meeting. Is there a motion to approve or any corrections or changes?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And the order of the agenda, I note that we have two additions under recommended contracting actions related to CH2M and HMG. And with that, if I could get a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Any further discussion or further additions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. And moving on to item number 4, the Executive Director Report. Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Madam Chair and honorable board members. I'm going to start out today with the program controls report. Overall program status as of the end of November, we have total expenditures to date of $515 million. And of course, you can see the program categories up here where those dollars have been allocated. Annual budget for forecast year 2019 was $162 million. Cost to date, $62 million. So we're significantly under budget. Again, of course, this was due to the slowdown for the forecast year 2019. Here on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see the cumulative total as we move along here. So as of the end of November, our forecast year budget actual to date is $62 million. And again, over here, you can see paid to date and the different categories and how they relate. Again, significantly under budget for the year. I have a few executive director approved contracting items to report out this month. The first one is task order 2 amendment 0 for cultural resource investigation for the southern embankment. That's with AECOM for $139,000. That's for some additional areas requested by the Corps of Engineers for cultural clearing. The second approved item was task order A5, interim program management and related services. This was a reduction in fee of $132,000 for CH2M or Jacobs. I also have a task order 25, amendment 4, hydrology and hydraulic modeling for HMG. And this was for additional hydraulic modeling for the southern embankment as requested by the Corps of Engineers. And the last one was work package 50A, change order 1 for demolition for Schmidt & Sons. That was $17,500. That was for unintended work found on site for a house demolition. Cass County Joint Water Resource District approved contracting items this month. Task order 2A2 property acquisition services for ProSource Technologies for $128,000. That's for lands and property acquisition, and a reduction of $293,000 for Alteg Engineers for property acquisition services. And the MCC-JPA had no approved contracting actions last month. So activities and achievements in the last month, in-town work status, we're preparing 3 projects for bid, the winter of 2019-2020. That's work package 43D5, Hickson Main Avenue Storm Sewer Project. Work package 43G, Oxbow Hickson Wetland Mitigation Project. and Work Package 50B, Property Structure Mitigation, Phase B. And you can see the anticipated engineer's estimates next to those. Current projects currently under construction, we have Work Package 42E, 2nd Street South, Main Avenue. That's been delayed over the course of the winter here. Work Package 43 CD, Oxbow Hickson Pump Station and Levee, delayed final completion. We have a few more items to clean up on that contract. And the Work Package 50A, Property Structure Mitigation, substantially complete, just a few small items to clean up on there. For the lands acquisition status, we have 8 parcel appraisals approved in the last month, 8 parcels acquired in the last month. Cass County Joint Water Resource District approved starting formal negotiations on 16 parcels in November. Developed farmland leases on project-owned lands for 2020, 4 of the 34 leases secured to date. Continue to secure rights of entry to support the southern embankment designs in both North Dakota and Minnesota. In both the Cass County Joint and the Moorhead-Clay County are working on those items. And continue to attempt to secure environmental monitoring easements both in North Dakota and Minnesota as necessary for the Corps' mitigation plan. And continue preparing an update for the property rights acquisition and mitigation plan that should go to the state engineer in January of next year. And planning for flowage easement valuation study pending the Clomar results, which we also expect January of next year. So here's the land acquisition and property mitigation report visually. You can see we've entered a lot more blue boxes on the channel itself. We're entering negotiations on pretty much every parcel associated with the channel in an attempt to acquire those lands prior to the receipt of the P3 bid late next year. Some public outreach and social media activities from this last month. I had a booth and I did present at the North Dakota Water Conference, December 3rd and through the 6th in Bismarck. I was on a panel with a number of other large water projects in North Dakota where we gave an update to the water at the water conference. Really, it was a great opportunity to engage with most of the interested individuals in water projects in the state of North Dakota. We also did a presentation at the North Dakota Water Topics Overview Committee last week, and that went very well. I was able to update legislators on the status of funding, litigation, and construction for the diversion project. We also have a Christmas lights display up in Lindenwood Park through the end of December, and we'll be releasing an article regarding the improved mitigation and how the Cheyenne diversion is going to be tied into the FM diversion hydraulically and the benefits related to that very shortly. So, on the P3 front, we issued the draft 4 of the RFP to the stakeholders for review on December 6th, and you can see the stakeholders who received that draft. We did meet with that group on December 16th and held a workshop to gather the input from the stakeholders. As we move forward, we anticipate the release of that draft in early January. So a look ahead, the draft in January 17th, participate on one-on-ones with the proposers March 2nd through the 6th. We're going to complete the NDSU Ag Impact Study next year at some point. It looks like that will probably be later in the year. Anticipate FEMA approval of the Clomar early next year. Secure the remaining rights of entry for Southern Embankment design in North Dakota and Minnesota, and negotiate the scope for the Phase 2 flowage easement valuation. 3 to 6 months out, initiate bidding and construction on these 3 projects I mentioned before. And that is what I have for the Executive Director report.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Are there any questions? All right, then moving on to the Army Corps of Engineers project update. Is there anyone here from the Corps, or do you have something, Joel?
Madam Chair, unfortunately, Terry Williams was unable to be here today, but she did give me her update to report to the board. So, a number of interesting items happened last month with the Corps. I think the biggest one was the wild rice control structure was awarded to Ames Construction. A total a bid of $58.7 million with an option to that would bring it up to $59.4 million. That project is anticipated to break ground early next spring when conditions allow, and we'll begin construction on the second of 3 structures for the southern embankment. Some other items: work continues on the inlet structure. They completed pile load tests, and they will be moving into foundation and site work next summer in 2020. The Red River structure design continues. We're at approximately 35% design as of today. The physical model is operating, and they are gathering data from the physical model that is being incorporated into the design work. And so they're going to continue testing throughout the next few months on that. There may be an opportunity for some diversion representatives to actually go to Vicksburg to see the physical model in operation and work with the folks there to understand how that's being incorporated into the project. So as we get maybe over the course of the next month, as that becomes more clear, I can report that out to the board. Southern Embankment Plan B is being designed for the western tieback levee right now, and we're at approximately 35% on those plans, as well as a 30% design for the I-29 grade raise project. So if there's any questions on the core projects, I'll try to answer them for you.
Thank you. Any questions? Well, it's exciting. Sounds like there's a lot going on. Then we'll move along to the legal update. Item 6A is the WIFIA action. Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 6A is just simply an update on the WIFIA schedule. We'll include that every month as we go through the WIFIA process. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I just want to keep the board and the Finance Committee updated as to our status on that workflow. There's also, we briefly had some discussion about the requirement under WIFIA yesterday for 3 years of audited financials, and there was some discussion at the Finance Committee regarding having a number of the Finance Committee members work together to figure out what the best strategy for that is, and then there'd be some discussion at the next Finance Committee regarding which particular firm would be the best suited to be selected for that.
Thank you. Item 6B, the resolution for reimbursement of certain expenditures for loans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a reimbursement resolution. Those of you who are part of member entities that issue bonds on a regular occurrence will probably recognize this. This is a IRS compliance document in which you have an entity that intends to reimburse itself out of tax-exempt proceeds. As part of the diversion financing, the authority will be issuing approximately $561 million of WIFIA loans, with approximately $81.6 million of SRF loans, and then some additional revenue bonds, and maybe working with the Cass County Joint Board regarding temporary refunding improvement bonds. As a result, we've created a declaration of official intent for the authority to reimburse itself out of those proceeds for project-related expenditures. Of note, under the IRS code, if you have a project that takes a significant amount of time to complete, more than 5 years, you can invoke an exception within the code to reimburse yourself up to a period of 5 years from the date of the declaration of official intent. And so what this resolution does is just authorize the executive director to go ahead and sign that declaration of official intent.
So you would like a motion to approve the resolution?
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or further discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Schirling?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Judd?
Aye.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Aye.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. And item 6C, an extension of a memorandum of understanding with Cass County for Human Resource Services.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. This is an extension of the MOU that is currently in place with Cass County regarding Cass County providing HR services for the Diversion Authority. We are currently exploring invoking a statutory section that would allow the county to be a co-employer. However, it's looking increasingly like we'll need Attorney General opinion for the Secretary of State's office. And so while we work through that, we wanted just to extend the temporary interim MOU. Also, later on in your agenda, you'll be discussing potentially moving the Diversion Authority offices over to the old Civic Center. In addition, there are some HR issues long-term regarding hiring additional staff and IT services. And so we felt that in the interim, it was better just to extend the temporary MOU, which allows the parties to amend that as we learn more information about their relationship. It was approved by the Cass County Commission, and we'd be asking the authority to approve that today. And it just extends it under the same terms for a period of 2 years. Once we know more about the specifics of the HR services and the staff for the authority, we can finalize the MOU.
Thank you. Any questions or a motion?
Move
Mr.
to approve the MOU.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Schirling?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Judd?
Aye.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Aye.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Chairperson
Yes.
Schirling, just want to note that the three commissioners here, we don't benefit personally from them renting the Civic Center space, so, but I don't want anybody to view that as a conflict, so.
Okay. Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, as long as it's been brought up, maybe Mr. Shockley, who brought this up yesterday, so maybe Mr. Shockley, for the record, can.
Certainly. Mr. Shockley, you want to address any conflict?
Yesterday I was asked specifically about the conflict issue, if there would be a conflict with members of one governing body voting on, here, the city of Fargo, voting on the Civic Center lease, and the Diversion Authority Board being on the same board, voting on that lease. After review, I think the most analogous AG opinion is one out of the city of Harwood, in which the Harwood City Council members, a majority of that council was also on a nonprofit entity. The AG said it wasn't a conflict because none of the board members would derive a personal benefit out of it because their salary neither increased nor decreased based upon the rental agreement. And so I'm comfortable that as voting members of the Diversion Authority Board, even if you are on the Fargo City Commission, you would not be in a conflict situation to vote on the underlying lease for the Civic Center.
Thank you.
Our only benefit is Joel's closer to us now, so we can find him quicker.
Any further comment or questions? Thank you. Then moving on, we've to item number 6D, we've got a pipeline to deal with, the New Star Agreement.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. This is one of the first MOUs that is being presented to the Diversion Authority. It was presented yesterday at Finance Committee. There are multiple utilities that run underneath the channel as well as the southern embankment. We have really been focused on those utilities that run underneath the channel and coordinating the relocation efforts of those utilities in anticipation of the construction of the channel through a P3 developer. There are several complicating factors when you're having a developer who is also designing the construction work and coordinating both the utility and the P3 contractor. And that's why we have developed a series of what are referred to as third-party MOUs. New Star has a gas line that runs across the existing, where the existing right-of-way for the project will be. Gas lines are particularly challenging as a utility because to reroute them, you need a Public Service Commission approval for the route change, even though it might be a minor route change. There's a lot of advanced planning involved in the relocation of a gas pipeline. We do not want to be in a situation in which we're interrupting gas service, because oftentimes the gas companies will charge a fee to the authority or political subdivision that's asking for that interruption. And so we're trying to coordinate the planning efforts. And as part of that, New Star and the authority P3 team and myself have arrived at an agreement whereby they can begin their initial activities for planning of the relocation of the gas line. That includes using engineers and environmental scientists for that site work. So they can get started on that. Later on, we'll be bringing back the underlying MOU between the authority and New Star, but this gets them started. It comes with a recommendation from the Finance Committee and also comes from a recommendation from the P3 team so that we can keep moving along.
Thank you. Any questions?
Move for
And
approval.
Motion. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Schirling?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Judd?
Aye.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Aye.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shockley. Item number 7, public outreach. They met yesterday. Mr. Olson, do you have a report, or it looks like Mr. Schneider may as well?
Yeah, Rocky.
Hi, I'm Rocky Schneider with the Program Management Consultant. The Outreach Committee met yesterday, had a really good discussion. 2 main points that we wanted to bring up to the board today. One is a talking points document that we've changed to the informational points on the diversion project. Were emailed out just prior to this meeting to all of you. If you didn't get it for some reason, I apologize, and I'll make sure I get you on that list. But it went out not just to the board, but to several people in the audience and other interested parties in the region as well that have asked to be kept in the loop and up to date. So hopefully that's helpful. The other major item, the discussion at the Outreach Committee, was a communications plan update that we are working with Joel on coming in the next year. And one of the things we're doing to feed that information is we're really trying to get to the bottom of who do we need to target and how best to target them. I think we've all had discussions about we need to be, more present here, less present there, in different types of mediums. And while we all have great input, I think we want some data to back up where that should be and how we should do it. So we're working on, I guess we're calling it a survey. It's not quite a poll, but it's a survey of different populations that we're working on. There'll be upstream population, sort of a more metro area population. Try to figure out where are they getting their news. Do they want more news or less news on the project? Kind of judge how we're doing on sort of the scale of things, and then maybe where we need to target more and maybe where we need to target less. So some real hard data that we can put into the communications plan update, so we're not just coming out with all these good ideas, we're knowing where to put them. And so you'll see that at just the start of the new year, and you might get them in the mailbox. Urge everybody to fill them out and drop them back in. So
Thank you.
if there's any questions, or Roger, if that was submissive.
From anyone? Okay, then, Mr. Dawson, do you have anything for us from the Business Leaders Task Force?
Madam Chair, we haven't met since the last meeting of this group, so I don't have anything to report.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate you being here. Land Management also met yesterday. I think you've all seen our property status report, so there really isn't much else to add at this point unless Eric Dodds has anything to add. We're certainly clipping along, and we're on track to acquire all the needed property in the channel, by next fall. So I believe that's about 350 some odd parcels at this point. So moving on then to item 9, Finance met yesterday. We could get the financial report, Mr. Paulson.
Madam Chair, as noted, 9A, the financial report, item 9A in your packet, largely Mr. Paulson, his executive director's report, covered the high points of approved budget, the status, and our current expenditures to date. I would add that our net position through October 31st is $92.6 million. I'd be happy to entertain any questions, but I think this has largely been covered.
Does anyone have any questions for Commissioner Grunberg? Okay, then we've got vouchers. Or was there a question? Okay.
So then, Madam Chair, for 9B, in your packet, 8.345 million in expenditures is outlined, 6.6 Cass County Joint Water Resources District, Dorsey and Whitney, 81,353, Onstead Twitchell, 124,503, Cass County, $3,320, City of Fargo, 1.522 million, North Dakota Water Users Association annual membership dues of 5,000. Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions on the vouchers? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Schirling?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney? Mr. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Judd?
Aye.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Aye.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Moving on to the 2020 cash budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've worked with the PMC to put together the 2020 cash budget. If you recall, this was presented at the last board meeting as in draft format. I wanted to allow another month for the board to review the specifics related to the cash budget and be able to answer or ask any questions that you may have. So you'll notice here on the right-hand side of your screen and paper, forecast year 2020 cash budget is being proposed as $138.5 million. You can see the scheduled budget categories on your left-hand column, and that will indicate where the expenditures are anticipated to take place in 2020. A level 2 summary will give you more information of the specific projects intended to be funded next year and the anticipated expenditures. On this page, I wanted to note out a couple of slight changes for the board. Under Program Management Services, we have a few different line items here. The audits that was added in here is an audit that is required by the WIFIA for the WIFIA loan. And this was discussed at Finance yesterday, and we did update the budget with a $100,000 budget for audit-related services in 2020. I'd also like to note here, there were no changes between last month and this month for the Diversion Authority operations for forecast year 2020. And so I still am anticipating about $950,000 internal operating budget, including proposed staff members. I wanted to show this, where the revenue sources are coming from for the cash budget. And again, this is a cash budget. This is we are not borrowing money for this budget. And here's where the anticipated revenues to support the cash budget are coming from. So please note the sales tax from Fargo and Cass County, the state of North Dakota for $56.8 million, investment income of $900,000, miscellaneous $800,000, and a fund balance carryover of $31.8 million. And that fund carryover balance does come from our cash reserves that we have. I think Tony may have announced about $98 million. So any questions on the 2020 cash budget?
And it would be fair to say that our sales tax revenue has exceeded this last year our budgeted revenue amount. Is that correct?
That's correct. The forecast year 2019 anticipated sales tax for both Fargo and Cass County came in higher than anticipated. Those two budgets were, or those two anticipated revenue amounts did come from both Fargo and Cass County. So it was the anticipated amount for next year were plugged in as the cash budget revenue sources.
Okay, great.
Madam Chair, I haven't seen the data, but I've heard the mayor was presented some of our data, and I believe 6% growth. Perhaps you'd like to comment on that? Is that 6% year-to-date? Is it 6% for the month?
I think a 6% year-to-date is what we're seeing right now, and we've had great growth in that. I think Bernie Dardis has had good growth in West Fargo as well, so we've been very happy about that. And since we're all part of Cass County, I think it helps on the county tax.
Yes, the county has been up consistently over the last year. So keep shopping for Christmas, everybody.
Madam Chair,
Yes. Roger,
What-
please.
what's the difference between the county and the state? I thought the county was supposed to, we're supposed to share 50/50. Is the city catching up here, or what, or didn't I understand that right? I thought the county and the city were in equal amounts.
Commissioner Olson, I can answer that question for you.
Yeah.
So the line item revenue source for the state of North Dakota up there, that 56 million, that does need to be matched by local funds for the projects. So the cash balance that we're carrying over along with the sales tax revenue provides that 50% match on the project in order to access the state funds of 56.8 million.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mayor.
But I think, Roger, there is a little difference. The county puts a certain percentage of theirs in, and they have some for just county projects. And I don't, Rick, Mary, you probably know that it's 6% that they retain. So they have that for county projects. Otherwise, the city of Fargo puts 100% in. But
So yes, we do a number of projects, as you're probably aware, Roger, out in the county. Mapleton, I know, is a big one coming up, so. Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve? Would we like to approve this?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Judd?
Aye.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Aye.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Thank you. And now we have a number of contracting actions.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have 4 contracting actions for the board to consider today. These have been recommended by myself and also recommended by the Finance Committee. The first one is for Work Package 42E. That's a change order in the amount of 81,000. And Madam Chair, would you like to take these one at a time, or should I explain them all and we'll go through them?
I would defer to the finance chair.
Take them all at once if that's.
Take them all at once.
Okay. The second recommended contracting action is a master service agreement for Program Advisors Services LLC in the amount, budgeted amount of $675,000. And this item is for Mr. Martin Nicholson, who is moving from Jacobs to Program Advisory Services. And my recommendation is that I would like to retain Martin through the procurement and because of his vast knowledge of the project and the continuity that he provides. The third item is a master service agreement extension for Jacobs through February of next year. And also the fourth item is a master service agreement extension for HMG. Both of these extensions I'm requesting board action on to allow me additional time to work through negotiations on the MSA. So that includes the 4 recommended contracting actions for the board.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or further questions on any of these items? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Judd?
Aye.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Aye.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Thank you. And we'll move on to the Civic Center lease.
Yes, as alluded to prior in the meeting, I have met with the co-executive directors, and we have been in search of a resting spot for the Diversion Authority offices since I was hired by the board. I'm currently housed in the Cass County Courthouse. However, my offices will be occupied by a different individual in January. So we worked to vet out multiple different options. Ultimately, the most cost-effective and best option for the Diversion Authority was determined to be the ability to occupy the Civic Center office space that housed the former administrative offices for the city of Fargo. The offices are furnished, the desks are there. It gives us the ability to have a conference room for meetings, as well as the use of the old commission chambers within the city of Fargo. And so I've worked with Mr. Redlinger to put together a lease agreement with the city of Fargo for that space. And I have that before you tonight for consideration.
Thank you. Questions?
And I know Mayor Judd needs a place too for an office, so you're welcome if you want to be in that space too, Mayor Judd.
I'm going to get you, Mahoney.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any further discussion?
What's the amount?
What's the amount?
$840 a month.
$840?
Commissioner Olson, it's $840 a month. That's correct. So the city of Fargo is giving me a little bit of a deal.
Roger, are you asking us to go higher in the amount, or we're just a poor city?
I just couldn't find the amount in here. I'm sure it's here, I just didn't find it.
Thank you. Any further questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sherling?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Judd?
Aye.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Aye.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Thank you. And moving on to item 10, we have the public-private partnership overview. Is that you, Mr. Paulson?
That's correct, Madam Chair, and thank you very much. I would like to initiate some education sessions with the board related to the P3 procurement. One, just to answer questions and provide you with the information necessary to make proper decisions related to the procurement. And two, to allow board members to express the value of going through the P3 procurement process and how it relates to our project. So I'm proposing to the board to do a number of different sessions each month over the course of the next year. And if the board can recall, we are moving forward with P3 procurement in 2020 with the anticipation of signing that agreement December or early January in 2021. So I've parsed out some different topics to discuss with the board, and this is just for your information tonight to let you know what's coming in the near future. So.
Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, at these sessions, Joel, are you going to be able to call in or plan that far ahead, or dates and times?
I'm anticipating doing these during the board meetings.
Okay.
You know, as a piece of the board meeting, we'll dive into a small PowerPoint about these different topics. So I don't anticipate anything outside of the normal board meetings.
Okay, sorry, I thought it was like separate sessions, so.
I can certainly do those if you'd like.
No, that's fine, that's
Councilmember Hendrickson.
And although we don't have questions now, I'm certain we will have many questions in the future as we dive into this.
That's right.
Before, we're scheduled to go into an executive session.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I may, I believe Mayor Mahoney has an additional item. So.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, we've been graced with you being chairperson for the year and gone through all these different things. Every year as we rotate, since John Shockley made it work that way, every chair has done different things in their year of being chair of this diversion project. So you had quite a year. Hovind signed a PPA of 750. We went up in money that we're going for the project, 300 million more, which we never would have expected. Great work. The legislative body gave us an additional 180 million. You have to go out and work with the legislative body. You hired Joel Paulson, which is going to make my life a lot better. So I'm very excited about that as I have that to happen. And WIFIA alone came about with your diligence and work in Washington as well as work within the community. And what we're especially excited about as a diversion authority is we've had some construction go on. So we've always wanted that to happen, and the inlet restarted, and you now have an award of $59 million for the Wild Rice River as well. So we have done two things for you, is that Daryl gave us a PowerPoint. You haven't prepared one. So what we're going to do is give you a book which has pictures of yourself and many of the events that went on during the year. The board members have written little notes through that. I suspect Mayor Judd's is going to be outstanding, but the rest of us put our little notes in there as well. And in order to always honor this, Mayor Williams had liked a little thing in sculpture. So John Offit has made this for you. We want nights where you're relaxed and happy that you're not doing this job anymore, you can look at the sculpture and be reminded of what you have done this year. So as a board, we'd like to give you a round of applause and thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Mahoney, and thank you, everyone here. This has been a real privilege to work with this group this last year. It has been one of the more challenging things I've ever done, and I raised 3 boys. So this has been just a wonderful challenge. It's expanded my knowledge of many, many issues, and it has been just really, really satisfying. But it couldn't have been accomplished, all of the things that Mayor Mahoney just talked about, if it wasn't for everyone in this room and beyond. I just can't thank this board enough for all the effort and time you put into this, and also previous boards that have worked so tirelessly to get us here. We had thought that we would have this thing built by now, and we're facing a flood this spring potentially, and so we are making progress though, and we will have this thing built in 6.5 years, right?
That's correct.
But I want to thank Heather Warden, our administrative assistant that has been here and keeping us all in line and straight. All these board members, also all the committee members, Commissioner Greenberg is Chair of Finance, and Mr. Olson's Chair of Public Outreach. I'm Chair of Land Management, but there are many, many people on those committees that aren't here in this room today that are also not only staff, but elected public officials from both Minnesota and North Dakota, and I thank them. I thank all of the staff, the engineers, the legal staff, the administrative staff that works on this project every single day. And when you need, somebody to come off the bench for a minute, hey, Bob, make a phone call or do something. I mean, they're right there, every single one of them. I can't thank them enough. And also, our program management consultants, and it's just great to have you, Joel, on board with us now as well. So I'm going to look forward to watching this project unfold in the future. Thank you all. And I would be remiss if I didn't just add one other thing, is much thanks to all of our federal delegation, especially Senator Hovind, for his diligence in securing federal financing, and also for 2 previous governors in Minnesota and Governor Burgum for all the work and support they've done to get this project where we're at. So with that, we have another item on our agenda, which would be an executive session.
I'll make the motion because I read fairly fast. I move that the Diversion Authority meet in executive session as authorized by the North Dakota Century Code 44-04-19.2 to provide negotiating instructions to its attorney and P3 team regarding the terms and conditions of the draft project agreement for the design, construction, finance, and operation of the diversion channel and associated infrastructure.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and we are adjourned to the River Room.
Yes.